Hello. It's the end. Almost.
He's a monster. He's monster sized. His tail is probably about that.
We'll call the Senate Finance Committee to order. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We are in executive session. Senator Waters has come down with diverticulitis, I'm told. And is not with us today. We do have a replacement. The minority leader is here. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Kane, why don't you take over the show here?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Michael Kane, the Legislative Budget Assistant. In front of you, you have three documents. You have a surplus statement, which I'll go over in a second. And you also have two amendments, which are all posted on our website under the Senate Finance Committee link. The first to House Bill 1 being 2638S, which is not the most reader-friendly document, but it's a strikeout insert. When the committee adopts their amendment, what we do is we put a compare report with a little more detail online for everyone. That's the 1,500-page report. But so just for now, this is so the Senate clerk doesn't have to print 800 pages for House Bill 1.
Just a second. If
Sure.
there are available chairs, please take one.
There's some in front, as I tell my students.
Sure.
Some of those are reserved, so. All right, I apologize, Mr. Kane, continue.
Not at all. And the second amendment is 2637S. That's a strikeout all and replace. That's House Bill 2. So that's the trailer bill. Just going over the surplus statement really quick, this ensures that the Governor, House, and Senate propose a balanced budget, General and Education Trust Fund. As far as the Senate's concerned, based on your revenue estimates, based on the increase in the lapses, on the information that you obtained from the agencies, there's a deficit of $93.4 million in 25, which will require a draw from the rainy day fund to bring that down to a little under 200 million. In comparison, in the House back in April had estimated this draw at about 150 million. So there has been like almost a $60 million swing to the good. For 26 and 27, based on the revenue and appropriations in the general fund, there is an estimated transfer back into the rainy day fund at the end of the biennium of about $50.4 million. And that accounts for all your revenues that were estimated, your appropriations, as well as lapses.
If I could.
Sure.
Just a question. As far as I know, the governor's budget was said that we were going to have about an $80 million draw. Fiscal committee approved another $5 million to go to the YDC. We've had a couple of settlements that will also come out of that, and I believe that that pretty much explains all of the difference between the governor's draw on the Ready Day Fund and our draw on the Ready Day Fund. Am I in the ballpark?
In the
Give or take $1
ballpark.
million?
Yeah, so the largest variants are those. On Schedule 2, you can see a statutory and fiscal. You had $4.5 million for a YDC settlement, but you've also had two settlements of about 2.5 million for other cases that are also accounted for in here. So those were things that happened after the governor and House proposed their budget that the Senate had to account for. So at the end of 27, a deposit into the rainy day fund of about 50.4 million based on your estimates, leaving the rainy day fund balance a little under 250 million at 249,472. There's a lot of detail here that I can walk through at any time that if you want to go through. But if I turn to page 5, the Education Trust Fund, the other part of the combined General and Education Trust Fund, the Senate Finance proposal will leave a balance of about $19 million in the Education Trust Fund at the end of the biennium. That's compared to 0 in the House plan and about 13.9 in the governor's plan. So if you have any questions, I can walk you to any areas that you have, but feel free to come by our office as well.
Senator Lang.
So just real quick, going back to page 1, the
at the end of '25, because of the $93 million, we're ending with roughly $199 million in surplus beginning into the next biennium. Is that accurate?
That's 199 into the rainy day fund.
Into the rainy day
Yes,
fund, right.
yes, that stays.
And then by the time we're all done through the biennium, we've increased that 199. We've put money back into the rainy day fund, so we end up with $249 million in the rainy day fund.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Additional questions from the senators? Senator Rosenbaum.
What is the current balance of the rainy day fund? Is
Two.
it 292?
292.5, so the latest cap for 292.5.
Seeing no additional questions. All right. I believe that we're ready for a motion on House Bill number 1.
Move amendment number 2638S.
Senator Lang, Senator Pearl, discussion. Seeing none. Oh, Senator Rosenbaum.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments are kind of about both 1 and 2, if you'll permit that. I mean, it's
Better
always,
than having you repeat them all.
I mean, as always, the Senate has made improvements to the budget the House sent us, in part from the benefits of higher and more accurate revenue projections. And I'd like to thank you for your leadership of this committee. I think you were always very open to any comments or questions that any of us had. But I'd like to say that I don't think we can confuse better with adequate. The budget before us in House Bills 1 and 2 does really nothing to lower costs for Granite Staters. In fact, it raises costs in several ways. One is by failing to invest in new money for housing, which is far and away the #1 issue for people in this state. We see rising cost of construction, and I don't see that housing costs will do anything but continue to rise. It also, I believe, raises property taxes by cutting that distribution of state support to municipalities from the rooms and meals tax, and also less funding for the state aid grants, which again contribute to the cost of housing. I feel that the House Bill 2 imposes still an income tax on some of our most vulnerable children and families. It increases healthcare costs through increased copays on low-income people, and at the same time repealing the Prescription Drug Affordability Board, which is the only entity that's actually working to lower drug costs. And this budget assumes $2.5 million in savings from its first initiative, with another $6 million in development. It jeopardizes access to health and human services programs because of the $51 million back of the budget cut and elimination of nearly 100 positions. The department is going to have no wiggle room, I don't think, and that worries me. And finally, the budget pretty much guts the Renewable Energy Fund, which supports projects that would lower utility costs. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting House Bills 1 and 2. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator. Senator Perkins Cook.
Thank you, Senator. As with my colleague, my comments kind of reflect on HB 1 and 2, and I do also want to thank the committee for a lot of hard work. I know we saw a lot of damage done to the budget in the House, and I think some of that has sort of been improved in the Senate, but unfortunately we still have a long way to go. We did see a choice in this budget to increase by over $30 million our spending on school vouchers over the biennium, which sends money to some of our wealthiest families in the state, who can already afford private school tuition and away from our neighborhood schools. and we've seen harmful policy that will prevent access to healthcare and will weaken essentially our small business environment. Something I know well and grew up with. We see work requirements that, as far as we've seen from a failed experiment nearly a decade ago, don't increase work but cost the state millions of dollars and only serve to disenroll people on Medicaid, which increases opioid deaths, creates harm on mental illness, leads to more uninsured people, more uncompensated care, which is just more expensive for our state in the long run, and ultimately leads to less MET revenue, which I know is something that's been a hot discussion this year. And lastly, we see this harmful DEI language, which we saw a lot of our businesses band together and talk about. This is harmful to our workforce. It's harmful to our small businesses because for those of us that are of a generation that are choosing where to build our lives and want to be young and innovative part of the workforce, it certainly harms our business environment to sort of be behind the curve on embracing an America that is truly inclusive. So, that still remains in this budget, unfortunately, and it's something that, we should have seen removed and hopefully still will. So, we're likely to end back in court with that, which is also, unfortunately a fiscally irresponsible way to handle it. So, our job as legislators is to lower the cost of living for our constituents, improve access to health care and safe communities, strengthen kids' and grandkids' educational opportunities, create our thriving Main Street communities. And so, unfortunately, this budget just doesn't address those priorities. And for that reason, I appreciate all your hard work, but I will unfortunately be voting against this as well. Thank you.
Additional comments?
Yes.
Senator Ennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few quick things. A lot of times we look at a budget like this and we key on those things that are negative, and I appreciate the comments made by my colleagues around some of those issues. I'd point out with housing, we've done a lot over the last several years, and we did some good things this time. I think we're at a place where we recognize that the role of the state is to facilitate housing construction, maybe not to pay for it. And there are a number of ways that we can do that, and I'm sure we'll continue to get creative around that. I am personally disappointed in our funding of higher education, both the university system and the community college system. These places have amazing staff, wonderful students, and they add so much value to our communities and to our state. And we need to start viewing both of these entities as investments in New Hampshire's future, not as expenses. And I'll point out once again, if you go back to 2006, we provided $100 million to the university system every year. Adjusting for inflation, that'd be 166 today. We're at half that. We're funding higher education in New Hampshire at half the rate we were 20 years ago. That's embarrassing. It just is. And when you look at the Small Business Development Center and what they do, what Extension does, it's good stuff. We restored Medicaid cuts that came over from the House. That's a good thing and a very positive thing that we did. We've worked on the arts and bringing back the council. That's tremendous. We've made good investments in transportation. And while some may not like it, education freedom accounts are going to be with us. And I think that's really important because there's a study in Ohio that was done that shows that Black children, boys, and kids in long-term poverty are the biggest beneficiaries of voucher programs. So if we want to help those in need and those who most need it, this is a good program. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for all your hard work, and the rest of the committee members, Senate President, Majority Leader. I think we've come together reasonably well as a group to get this done, and it'll serve the state well. Thank you.
Senator Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I echo the leadership shown while we're going through this. It being my first year on finance, it was a daunting task to come in and learn what was going on. But, again, I'm accentuating the positive that we're doing here. The rooms and meals tax, right? We expect that to go up, and we put the revenue share back to where it was. So towns will see increased revenue sharing this year as we share the revenue that the state gets. We made investments in ground and wastewater in this budget to be able to support our communities' housing development. We've put money into higher education. We've put education services. We're going to spend more money on education this year for our school systems than we spent last year. And we're doing this in the face of declining enrollments. So we continue to invest in education for our state and our students here in New Hampshire. Again, in the face of declining enrollments, we're still spending more money to support our education, to support our needs. And lastly, I'm just going to talk about the housing development. There are some very good programs and policies that put in this budget this year to deal with housing development, AOT permits and permit by notice that allow timelines to expedite services. So there are some really great policies in this budget that will help all of the Granite Staters. So I'll be supporting the budget.
Thank you. Senator Bertzel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While there's some things in this budget that I don't care for, specifically the Group 2, but there are a lot of things in here that I have to support. We've, the developmentally disabled, we've fully funded their wait list. We have the suicide hotline, we're bringing that back. 46,000 of our Granite Staters use that, along with 3,000 of our veterans. So that's definitely a plus. We are putting $2.1 billion with a B dollars into our educational trust fund. So that's a lot of money for our education. Like Senator Lang said, we are spending a lot of money on lower enrollments. So I think this budget, it was a difficult road to go down. We were able to restore a lot of things that the House pulled out, and it took a Herculean effort to get this over the finish line. While I don't like the Group 2 piece, I am not going to vote against the budget because I think it's important that to our disabled community, to our Medicaid providers, and to our citizens that we put a budget forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Pearl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know many of the things that I had on my list to talk about, my colleagues have brought up, and I appreciate the leadership from our Senate President, our chair, excuse me, and our majority leader. But, a couple things I will point out, solid waste management has been a big topic in the legislature for several years now. We've put together a really good site evaluation committee in this budget, and it will be a good process that will help all of our municipalities and the folks that are delivering our solid waste services. They'll have a good process here. It's a very solid process, and it will help us to look at our future needs in that area. We've listened to our constituents about inspections. We've put a very good, reasonable compromise on reducing inspections in this budget. I'm very pleased to see that. Long-term care services, we're taking a look at that, and we're trying to find a good path forward and looking at in-home care and the costs that are associated with it. And, the Medicaid and disability services have been mentioned. Those are things that I'm proud of that are in this budget, and I know we've had our concerns about Group 2, and I appreciate that. We've got a path forward. It isn't something we all love, but we've got a path forward. This was a very prominent issue for our governor that she ran on, and I'm thankful we were able to address that issue within this budget. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Senator Lang, this is my first time on Senate Finance. I had not been on a finance committee or any kind of fiscal committee since being on Ways and Means when I was a House member many years ago. And I'll be honest with you, there were times I felt like I was in the deep end of the pool drinking from a fire hose. But I really want to thank all of you. Even though there were times we did not agree on things, everyone was agreeable. We all saw the need to work together. And I think this committee did that, and I want to thank all of you. And I also want to thank the staff. Poor Mr. Kane, I think I bothered you more than anybody else trying to understand the budget and how it was put together. And I really want to thank you for all your time and your expertise and your patience as we went through me trying to understand what was actually going on. And your staff, as always, being very, very helpful. And I want to thank all of you for all your hard work getting us to this point today. I also would like to thank former Representative Umberger. She's kind of sitting there being quiet, but she and I worked together very closely, and she explained a lot of things for me as well. So, and then of course, we can't say enough about the committee secretary, Ms. Martone. We want to just say thank you. she kept us all together with all the necessary things we needed, and in fact, anticipating before we actually knew what we needed, and she had it there just in case. And Ms. Martone, along with our committee chair, are really the heartbeats of this committee to keep us moving forward. And I want to thank Ms. Martone, and I also want to thank our committee chair. He did a fabulous job managing everything, and value his opinion, and maybe we'll work together on finance again. Maybe 2 years, we'll see what happens. But anyway, I just wanted to thank everyone for all your help in this, and it was really, really appreciated. Thank you.
And now it's my turn. I do want to talk about vouchers, okay? I have received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails telling me, we're going to remember your vote on the vouchers. I write back, I hope you do, because it's going to save local taxes. How will it save local taxes? Cost of education on average in the state last year was $22,000. The state pays approximately $5,000. And if a student accepts that voucher, the state still pays the $5,000, but the local government doesn't pay for that student anymore. Oh, there's fixed costs, there's the building, there's this, there's that, there's this other thing. Well, we've also put into state law where those localities can share superintendents, can share people that are doing the special ed, can share this resource, can share that resource. And then we hear about, well, there's people out there that can afford to send their student to private schools, so why should we have to give them any money out of the state for the voucher? I was one of those parents. My wife and I and our 4 children didn't go to a public school until they went to high school, and then the kids got to choose whether to go to St. Thomas or to Spalding in Rochester. We didn't go on vacations. We didn't go to trips down to Boston anymore because it was too expensive to take the whole family down to a Red Sox game. We made choices. We made choices for our children. We did not believe that they would get as good an education in the public school during those, especially their formative years, that they would get at Rochester Catholic. So now, according to what I get in these emails, I'm being villainized because I think that the people that were like me, the hardworking people of New Hampshire that can save money for the local government by accepting a voucher and paying for their kids' education, are being villainized. So there's things to look at in all these things. Things that I would like changed in the budget. Things, but please look at the vouchers on an even keel, on an even footing. They can save local dollars. I did a study when I was on the Rochester School Board. Cabletron was going out of business. Massive number of people moving out of Rochester. You didn't see so much of that in the grammar schools, but where you saw it was at the middle school, where they had 6 ninth grades and 6 10th grade. Middle school would be 6th, 7th, and 8th. And the same thing at the high school, where those could be reduced. And there is real savings that are there. But my complaint was they were not reducing the administrative positions at the same rate they were reducing the teacher positions. So that's my little rant for today. And with that, any further comments?
No, sir.
Okay, the motion before us is ought to pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Do I have a motion on House Bill 2?
Mr. Chair, I move Amendment 2637S.
We have a motion and a second. Comments? Seeing none, all those, whoop.
Do we have a roll call on this?
If you want a roll call on it, you have to ask for one.
I'm asking.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, can we just say ditto? Because it seems like we've been talking about HB 2 while we were talking about HB 1.
We're just
They're so intertwined.
Don't you have other things you'd like to do? You don't.
Okay, any comments?
One comment, Mr. Chair. Again, it's so easy to get focused on the negative, right? I didn't get this, I didn't get that, this policy's in there I don't like, that policy's there. But when you look at this book of policy, the vast majority of this policy will help the citizens of New Hampshire, will make our state a better economic powerhouse in New England, will help our hospitals and our Medicare patients. Again, you know, it's easy to focus on the things you don't like, but there's much more in this budget that we should like and should be supporting. So I think it was tough work, it was hard work, but this is an excellent budget for the citizens of New Hampshire.
Senator Perkins Cogan, then Senator Carson.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, nothing can take away from the hard work that went into the budget, and, you know, I think we have to acknowledge that. But I do want to just say, I think there's a lot of people out there that are not choosing to focus on the negative, but rather, you know, are just trying to make their way through the day, right? And I talk about this often, but we have these 3 little kids, and we get up, we try to put breakfast on the table, you know, get them to school, get out the door to work. And there are people all across the state doing that. And they are wanting to see their priorities reflected in a budget that addresses housing costs. And, you know, while we see declining enrollment in schools, that's because we don't have housing available to our next generation. So these are interconnected problems. You know, investing in education attracts our workforce. Having a workforce attracts our business. Having a university that can create a 21st century workforce is an economic driver for our economy. You know, we've spent a lot of time building a healthcare economy that we've threatened with all the sort of drastic action in this budget. So while there has been some harm undone during the course of this budget, it still doesn't sort of get to what the day-to-day Granite Stater experiences, which is, you know, housing, childcare, healthcare costs, energy costs. These are the things that are the priorities of our Granite Staters, and they got to go in first. And so I appreciate all the hard work. Of course we do. But I also just want to acknowledge that at the end of the day, you know, we need to be focused on them. And I'm afraid this budget just unfortunately doesn't do that. So thank you.
Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think when we started this process, we talked about the fact that we didn't have a lot of money. And that really was a big driver behind us trying to get a budget that met the needs of the people of the state of New Hampshire. We listened when we had the public hearing about what they felt was important and they needed restored. This committee did that. But what I think a lot of people forget was over the last 2 bienniums, we had a lot of money, and most of it was an infusion of cash from the federal government. We spent that money, and we were very smart about how we spent that money. But it was gone. It was gone. Now we have to go back to the New Hampshire way of living within our means. And that's what this committee did. Whether it's painful, and believe me, it was painful to look at what we had been spending on money before. But a lot of that was one-time money. And people were told, this is one-time money. We can't afford to carry it forward. And that's why we had to make a lot of very, very difficult decisions. So I look at this budget as a readjustment from having all that federal money to now we're focused at what we have. How much money do we have? I think it keeps us on a path to prosperity. A little bit of wiggle room here because of things that have happened that are way beyond our control. But we're still on that path. We're putting money into where people said they needed it to be. And that's what we've done. We've been very, very responsive to the people who came in here and talked to us about what was important and why it was important. And we worked to make that happen. Just like every other person sitting here, is it a budget that I think solves all problems? No. But there's that old saying, don't let the government solve your problems, because they usually end up making more. So I think we've met the needs of the people, and we need to move forward. This has been a period of readjustment. We're still on that path. We're doing much better than a lot of states around us here in New England. And I see us launching off of this budget into the next biennium more prosperous than we are today. Thank you.
Senator Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I tend to think ahead at least one budget. While I'm working on one, I'm thinking about the next one or two. And I see a couple of threats to our prosperity. One is the YDC cases. I see it as a real threat, especially since we've underfunded the settlement fund. And I'm concerned about how we would even pay for the cases in the fund, but really concerned about what happens if they go outside of the fund to Superior Court. I'm concerned about the 2 education funding lawsuits because I don't think that we have the resources to be able to implement adverse decisions. And I'm concerned about what's going on with what could happen to Medicaid on a federal level. But I'm also concerned about the potential cuts to SNAP because we have a high error rate. We could end up having to pick up the largest percentage among the states on SNAP costs. So I'm just thinking ahead, and once we get through this budget, I can devote myself full-time to worrying about the next one. But it's already starting to make me worry about the threats to our prosperity for the long term. Thank you.
Additional comments? Seeing none, we've had a request for a roll call. We're going to start over on this side of the room. Senator Perkins Coca. No. Senator Rosenbaum. Senator Lang.
Yes.
Senator Birdsall.
Yes.
Senator Ennis.
Yes, sir.
Senator Carson.
Yes.
Senator Pearl.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. The ayes have it. Any other business to come before us today? Do I have a motion? We have a motion to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Our business today being complete. We are adjourned, and this kind of ends the Senate Finance. I will be taking the aide out to dinner at some point, and I'll notify you when that is, and anybody else who wants to come along is more than welcome.